statements that Representative Omar has made. We've covered most of them. That some people did something is the one that really sticks in my craw pretty strongly. Raises a whole lot of flags for me. I think there are significant amount of justifications to raise it.
CARE was founded after 9/11 because they recognized that some people did something and that all of us were starting to lose access to our civil liberties.
2024, Representative Omar gave remarks at an event in Minneapolis in which she made treasonous statements. Whereas Representative Omar said she has spoken to many Somalians who asked her to intercede for the Somali government by pressuring the United States government into certain actions.
Members of Congress raised concerns about statements allegedly made during that event, specifically relating to conversations she reportedly had with members of the Somali community. The discussion highlights how Omar was said to have been approached by Somali individuals asking her to intervene with the United States government on matters involving Somalia. This section establishes the core issue being debated, whether the remarks could be interpreted as advocating for foreign interests while serving as a United States representative. The language used in this portion reflects the serious tone of congressional proceedings, where statements by elected officials are closely examined for their implications regarding loyalty, responsibility, and representation.
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Clause 2A.1 of Rule 9, I seek recognition to give notice of my intent to raise a question of the privileges of the House. The form of the resolution is as follows.
Recognized.
Censuring Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota. Whereas elected members of Congress take an oath to bear true faith and allegiance to the United States without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. Whereas Representative Ilhan Omar took an oath of allegiance to the United States upon becoming a citizen, declaring, "I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince, potentate, state, or sovereignty, of whom or which I have heretofore been a subject or citizen." Whereas on January 27, 2024, Representative Omar gave remarks at an event in Minneapolis in which she made treasonous statements. Whereas Representative Omar said she has spoken to many Somalians who asked her to intercede for the Somali government by pressuring the United States government into certain actions.
In this segment, members of Congress continue discussing past statements made by Representative Omar that have sparked controversy. One particular remark referenced during the discussion involves her earlier comments related to the events following the September 11th attacks. A congressional member expresses strong disagreement with those remarks, describing them as deeply troubling and explaining that they raised concerns about how the tragedy of 9/11 was characterized. The speaker emphasizes that statements made by public officials carry significant weight and can shape public understanding of historical events. The conversation reflects the broader political debate surrounding Omar's rhetoric and how different members of Congress interpret her comments.
Whereas Representative Omar assured the Somalians she spoke to, the U.S. government will only do what Somalians in the U.S. tell them to do. They will do what we want and nothing else. They must follow our orders, and that is how we will safeguard the interest of Somalia. Whereas Representative Omar continued, "For as long as I am in U.S. Congress, Somalia will never be in danger. Its waters will not be stolen by Ethiopia or others. Sleep in comfort knowing I am here to protect the interest of Somalia from inside the U.S. system." Whereas George Washington warned in his farewell address of 1796 to guard against the impostures of pretended patriotism, and further declared citizens by birth or choice of a common country, that country has a right to concentrate your affections. The name of American, which belongs to you in your national capacity, must always exalt the just pride of patriotism more than any appellation derived from local discriminations. Whereas these statements by Representative Omar clearly violate the oath she took as an elected member of Congress to defend and protect the United States Constitution. Whereas Representative Omar has exhibited the treasonous tendencies George Washington warned about, and her actions must be condemned by all members of Congress who adhere to the oath they took upon assuming office. And whereas by openly admitting her efforts to advance Somalia's interest using her position as a United States representative, Representative Omar has revealed herself to be a foreign agent acting on behalf of a foreign government. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota be censured.
Representative Omar's remarks. A member of Congress seeks recognition from the Speaker in accordance with House rules in order to present the resolution. The language used is formal and procedural, reflecting the structured nature of legislative debate. The resolution references the oath taken by members of Congress, emphasizing the commitment to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. It also references the oath of citizenship that naturalized citizens take when becoming Americans, highlighting the requirement to renounce allegiance to foreign governments. Within this context, the resolution argues that Omar's statements regarding Somalia raised questions about whether her comments aligned with the expectations placed on elected representatives. The section includes detailed references to the statements attributed to Omar and frames them as part of the justification for the proposed congressional action.
Representative Ilhan Omar forthwith present herself in the well of the House of Representatives for the pronouncement of censure. Representative Ilhan Omar be censured with the public reading of this resolution by the Speaker, and Representative Ilhan Omar be and is hereby removed from the Committee of the Budget and the Committee on Education and the Workforce.
Gentleman from Texas recognized.
Appreciate the chairman. I do associate myself with the remarks of the gentleman from Kentucky, but also the gentleman from South Carolina, the gentleman from Pennsylvania, the gentlelady, all the remarks that we've been talking about over here. And I appreciate the spirit of the remarks from the gentleman from Colorado. Would note that we're here for a very obvious reason. The door was opened, and now we're dealing with that. And the door shouldn't have been opened. I'm reminded when I was in the Senate Judiciary Committee in 2005, and Miguel Estrada was being filibustered by the Democrat majority at the time. And we know why. We know this because a memo that said very specifically that he was being filibustered because he was an Hispanic conservative was found, but then shoved aside. We couldn't talk about it because it was found on a server, and they said, we shouldn't get it. There's a whole lot of backstory on that. But there was a lot of drama around that. There were 7 judges being held up: Priscilla Owen, Janice Rogers Brown, because she's black. That was all happening. We just sweep that aside. And you fast forward, and Bill Frist was being pressured to deploy the nuclear option.
The text of the resolution references historical warnings about divided loyalty, including remarks attributed to President George Washington in his farewell address. These references are used to emphasize the importance of national unity and the expectation that members of Congress prioritize the interests of the United States. The resolution argues that Omar's statements could be interpreted as advocating for Somalia's interests while serving as a U.S. representative, and therefore calls for formal condemnation. The resolution proposes that Omar should present herself in the well of the House for the official reading of the censure and suggests that she be removed from certain committee assignments.
I remember being part of all those conversations, the Senate lawyer and the Judiciary Committee. Bill Frist decided not to deploy the nuclear option. In 2013, Harry Reid did deploy the nuclear option. 2017, then certain things changed at the United States Supreme Court. So now we live in that world. It is what it is. Now here we sit. The door was opened. I just went back and reread my speech on the floor because the gentleman, I hadn't done that yet. I went back and reread my speech on the floor. Not stand by every word of that speech. And in it, I referenced the fact that I had just a few months prior, had been in agreement with some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle with respect to January 6th, which there's disagreements on our side of the aisle on some of that with respect to the votes at the time, and that I'd taken very strong disagreement and sought apology from our colleague on our side of the aisle about some of the remarks that were said, but felt that this was not the right path to go down. I stand by that. So here we sit. I could associate myself and do with all the remarks of the gentleman from South Carolina. I have very strong disagreement with a lot of the statements that Representative Omar has made. We've covered most of them. That some people did something is the one that really sticks in my craw pretty strongly. Raises a whole lot of flags for me.
The speaker references past experiences in government, including events related to judicial nominations and Senate procedural debates. By recalling earlier controversies involving judicial confirmations and procedural tactics such as the nuclear option, the speaker draws parallels between past political conflicts and the current dispute involving Omar. The speech reflects the complex dynamics of congressional politics, where disagreements often intersect with institutional rules, historical precedents, and partisan tensions. The speaker ultimately reiterates strong disagreement with statements attributed to Omar while also emphasizing concerns about the broader direction of political debate in Congress. This portion illustrates how legislative discussions frequently extend beyond a single issue and become part of a wider conversation about political norms, institutional integrity, and the responsibilities of elected officials.